Hi guys, thanks for joining me. Today we're talking about the importance of podcasting and the tips and tricks that you can use to make the best podcast ever. Joining me today, I will have Seaview High School's legendary Mr. Panchos to take us through the process. Thanks, Mr. Panchos, for taking the time to be here today.
Thanks for having me, Miss Riley.
I'm excited to have you here, and we have a great show lined up for today's listeners out there.
Dropping some fire on the mic today.
So for those that don't know, Mr. Panchos is somewhat of an expert in podcasting for the classroom because he spent time at university studying to become a senior high school English teacher. For the last 7 years, he's had the privilege of teaching some of Adelaide's brightest Year 11 and 12 students.
No, let's be honest, they've had the privilege of being taught by me.
Well, yeah, you are a bit of a stage diva, that's true. But seriously, you must have taught podcasting before, in amongst with all your other topics. Talk us through that a bit.
Yeah, I have definitely used podcasts both to support my teaching and as a way to assess student learning. But more than that, I actually enjoy listening to podcasts in my free time for leisure as well.
Wow, so you found that podcasting is more than just an educational tool and can be listened to for fun as well?
Oh, absolutely, Miss Riley. Well, podcasting actually came into existence thanks to radio shows. There were some pretty popular radio shows around the world, and since radio is live, if you missed the show, there was no way to go back and hear it again. So we started to have companies record the podcast and release them online or in an app to let listeners to go back and catch up on their favourite shows.
Yeah, it's interesting you mention apps because Apple and Samsung both have podcast apps and offer listeners all different types of podcasts to enjoy. Is there any genre that you're particularly into at the moment?
Well, as we all know, I do love a good laugh, so I enjoy comedy-style podcasts but have recently started listening to true crime shows. There is one which actually helps solve a 20-year-old murder mystery here in Australia.
Oh, it's pretty incredible to think that someone like you or me, with just a computer and a microphone, is able to influence so many people, including the police, just by chatting.
Well, I think that deep down we all love a good story. It goes way back to how we told news before written language. Stories are crucial to passing on information, and now that we have come in a big way, thanks to technology, we can achieve that.
Yeah, I think it's great. And yeah, you're so right. Stories have become an important part of our culture and lifestyle. And especially as English teachers, we both know being able to tell a good story is a skill that takes time and practice. Speaking from your experience, would you say that there are things that our students can do to create interesting and meaningful podcasts?
Yeah, well, it's important to remember that all podcasts are different, but there are some key things that all podcasts should follow. First, podcasters need to check how they are being assessed. So that means checking the rubric if the podcast is being recorded at school.
Wait, so checking the rubric is the first thing students need to do? Why is that?
Well, that's ultimately how the teacher will mark the work, so you need to know what to include in order to get that A. That's why we all want it at the end of the day, so it's the best place to start.
That's so true. Before even thinking of a story or a segment, I guess we want our students to know they need to sit down and think about what to put in their show.
Yeah, and from there, they can take it anywhere they really want to go. It's really about detailed planning and research, though, as we all know too well. What will your show be about? Who can you interview? Why are you telling this story? And really picking a topic you know lots about. I'm not a numbers man. In fact, numbers scare me. That's why I became an English teacher. But it's certainly not a topic I would feel comfortable talking about.
Yeah, it seems important that people should sit down and plan before getting into the studio to record.
Definitely. In the real world, you would actually have to pay to use a recording space at a station or studio, so you want to be in there for as little time as possible to avoid paying a lot of money. So to be extra prepared, most podcasters send their questions to their interviewee. That's the person being interviewed before they arrive, so the person can plan what they want to say, which is what you have done the day before. It kind of lets you think up a few jokes here or there as well to make sure that it's entertaining.
Well, I guess lucky this show isn't about comedy because we haven't hit the mark. So after all this planning, when you're finally ready to record, what's important to remember? Clear speech? Time?
100%. Since we can't see images like we can on YouTube, it's important to speak clearly in a normal speed and with a good volume. But on top of that, great podcasters also change the tone of their voice to make their show seem more lifelike. It would be super boring to listen to a podcast if it sounded like this. So we really need to practice and sound like we are having fun on the show.
Yeah, well, our listeners would think we're having a great time because we make our voice change pitch and tone. But reality, we might be super bored. It's all smoke and mirrors in this industry.
Great simile there, by the way. I was trying hard to not to make it obvious, but yeah, it's a bit more of a bore being here, actually. Isn't that all your questions?
Oh, rough. That's workplace harassment right there. What about once the interview or podcast is over? What's next?
Well, at that point, it's just about editing and using software like Audacity. You can add different sound effects. They are free and royalty-free sounds you can easily download online, such as off of YouTube, and then add them into your work. It's always nice to have an opening sound and some laughter or other effects to make it more interesting. You'd notice we have no beeps on this show because we use no swear words, but a common way to edit those out in podcasting world is to use sound such as this.
If students follow all these steps, you're pretty sure they can create an A-grade work?
Oh, for sure, family. Anyone can do it with all the planning and practice. All they need to do is use the planning sheet and scripts and writing sheets that Miss Riley has provided, and they're well on their way to achieving that A.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Mr. Panchos. Well, that's all we have time for today, but thanks so much for coming in. You've given us so much information to digest. And I guess the best thing is, if listeners want to go back, they can just jump online and play this podcast back again.